I never imagined that a simple school excursion could change my life forever. That fateful day, when our class from Victory High School set out to learn about plants in Akambi Forest, became a dark chapter of my memory, a chapter filled with terror, loss, and a burning desire for justice. The fateful escape. I still remember how our bus had rumbled out of Lagos that morning. The chatter of excited students filled the vehicle as we looked forward to an adventure in the forest. Our beloved biology teacher, Mr. Adebayo, had promised us a day of discovery among the ancient trees and rare plants. But none of us could have foreseen the horror that lay ahead. My two best friends, Chidi and Farouk, and I were full of youthful curiosity. During the tour, as Mr. Adebayo and the park ranger explained the uses of different herbs and trees, Chidi leaned close and whispered, "Let's take a quick look down that hidden path over there." Farouk's eyes sparkled with mischief as he urged, "It'll be fun, Sigan. Just a quick detour, no harm done." I hesitated, remembering Mr. Adebayo's warning to stay with the group. But our desire for adventure overwhelmed caution, and soon we found ourselves sneaking away into the thicket. The forest was quiet and mysterious, its thick canopy filtering the sunlight into soft green hues. We walked quietly until a sharp noise, made us stop in our tracks. Ahead, in a small clearing, we saw something that would forever change our lives. 3 armed men stood in a tight circle around a 4th man, who was dressed in a neat suit. He knelt on the ground with his hands tied, pleading in a soft, desperate voice. Before we could fully understand what was happening, one of the gunmen shouted, "You betrayed us, Oga," and raised his pistol. The crack of the gunshot, bang, echoed through the forest as the suited man fell, blood darkening the soft earth around him. My heart stopped. I could see the terror in Chidi's eyes and the shaking hands of Farouk. In that instant, we knew we had witnessed a murder, a politically connected murder, I would later learn, designed to silence a man who had dared to expose corruption. We had seen too much. Realizing the danger, I motioned for my friends to follow me as we tried to retrace our steps back to the main group. But the snap of a dry twig under my foot betrayed our presence. One of the killers, a tall man with cold, piercing eyes, spun around and backed. "Who's there?" Panic seized us. We bolted through the forest, our breaths ragged and hearts pounding. "After them," he roared. "Split up." I cried, even as the chaos made it impossible to decide quickly. In the confusion, Chidi ran left and Farouk darted right. I pushed forward, terrified and determined to survive. Behind me, I heard the heavy thump of footsteps and the angry shouts of our pursuers. I could only hope to escape, even as the forest itself seemed to close in around me. The desperate flight. I ran faster than I ever had before, my legs burning and my mind a jumble of fear and sorrow. The night was falling, and every shadow seemed to hide a threat. I could still hear the echoes of gunfire mingling with my ragged breaths. Suddenly, I stumbled upon a small village on the edge of the forest, a quiet refuge in a place that had suddenly become full of terror. In the village, an old man with kind, weathered eyes, Baba Musa, as I later learned his name, noticed me. "Young man, what is wrong?" he asked softly, his voice gentle yet laced with concern. I could barely speak as I explained, in broken, trembling words, "I ran from the forest, my school, Victory High, they are being attacked. My friends. I saw a murder, and there's torture, please, help." Before he could say more, I heard heavy footsteps and a low, furious voice. I froze as I saw one of the killers step into view, scanning the area with hatred burning in his eyes. "Find the boy. Find him," he bellowed. I dove behind a low wall, my heart thundering in my ears as I listened to his angry mutterings. After what seemed like endless minutes, his footsteps receded into the night, leaving me trembling in the dark silence. Baba Musa quickly ushered me into his humble home. There, a younger man, whom Baba Musa introduced as Emeka, helped me calm down. Emeka produced an old radio and dialed a number to contact the local police. "We must hurry," he said in a low tone. "Your story is dangerous. These men are not ordinary criminals, they are connected to powerful people who would do anything to keep their secrets hidden." I sat with them in the small room, my body still shaking, as Emeka explained that the dead man in the suit had been a whistleblower. He had tried to expose a network of corruption involving high-ranking government officials. His murder, they believed, was designed to keep the truth buried. Now, the armed men were not only after us, they were hunting for every trace of that evidence, even if it meant torturing innocent students. But I had one piece of evidence that the killers had not known we would find. As I fled from the first scene, I had spotted an envelope lying on the ground. In it was a letter stamped with a government seal outlining secret deals, hidden funds, and notes that connected the murder to a powerful politician named Mr. Adebola. I kept it hidden in my jacket, its weight a constant reminder of the dangerous truth I now carried. After the immediate threat passed in the village, Baba Musa and Emeka knew that I must get help quickly. They led me to a safe house on the edge of the village, where we could plan our next move. Outside, the sounds of chaos still echoed from the forest, the cries, the shouts, the unmistakable crack of gunfire. My heart ached as I thought of my classmates back at the school, many of whom had been captured. I recalled how the armed men had returned to our group, torturing the students to force them to reveal our names. I could still hear their terrified screams. At the safe house, we met with a group of local villagers and a few police officers led by Captain Okoro, a stern, determined man with a deep sense of duty. "We have secured a small area here," he told us, his voice calm despite the dire situation. "But we cannot rest. The attackers are linked to powerful men, and they will not stop until they find every trace of you and your evidence. We must rescue the students and bring this evidence to light." Captain Okoro, Baba Musa, Emeka, Mr. Adebayo, who had managed to escape the initial attack and was tending to wounded students, and a few brave officers formed the rescue team. Our plan was simple yet dangerous: move quietly through the forest at night, locate the area where our classmates were held, and free them without alerting the attackers. As night deepened, we set off under a moonlit sky. I remember feeling as if the forest itself was watching us, every rustle of leaves and snap of a twig sending a shiver down my spine. We moved in a long, winding line, every step taken with utmost care. The tension was almost unbearable. Each of us knew that one wrong move could mean disaster. After hours of cautious trekking, we reached a clearing. There, by the dim light of torches, I saw several of my classmates, huddled together in fear. They were chained to trees, their eyes wide with terror as one of the armed men paced nearby, barking orders. I felt my stomach twist in pain as I recognized some familiar faces, friends who had laughed and joked with me just a few days before. Now, they were silent, their faces etched with sorrow and pain. Captain Okoro's voice broke through the night, whispered but firm, "We are here. Stay calm and follow our lead." The rescue team began to move in, positioning themselves around the clearing. I could see Mr. Adebayo quietly working to free a group of students from their chains. In the chaos, I noticed one of the armed men drop a small envelope. My pulse quickened as I realized it was the letter I had found earlier, now in plain sight. I quickly pocketed it, knowing that this evidence was our only hope of exposing the corruption behind the murder. Then, without warning, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, one of the leaders of the attackers, spotted us. "Get them. Do not let them interfere," he shouted, and in that moment, gunshots erupted. The clearing was thrown into pandemonium. I ducked behind a thick tree trunk, heart pounding in terror as the sounds of fighting mingled with the cries of my fellow students. Amid the confusion, I saw one of my classmates fall, a loud cry, a burst of pain that cut through the noise of battle. I could not stand by while more innocent lives were taken. Driven by both fear and the desperate need to help, I scrambled to a side path, throwing small stones to distract the attackers. The noise drew their attention away from some of the students, giving Captain Okoro the precious seconds needed to free them. "Over here, help me." I heard a soft cry as I caught sight of a younger student, his arm bleeding and his face twisted in agony. I rushed to him, gently untangling the ropes that bound him. "Stay with me, I'm here to help," I whispered, as I pressed my jacket against his wound. Every moment felt like an eternity as the firefight roared around us. I could see Baba Musa and Emeka walking side by side with the rescue team, pulling frightened children to safety. In the midst of the chaos, I took a moment to catch my breath. I looked at the letter in my hand. It wasn't just a piece of paper, it was the key to exposing a network of corruption that reached the highest levels of government. The man in the suit, whose death we had witnessed, had been trying to reveal the truth about Mr. Adebola's illicit activities. His mother was meant to silence him, but now, with this letter, we had the power to speak his truth. The attack on the camp. Our relief was short-lived. As we began to round up the freed students and tend to the wounded, we heard a fresh burst of shouts from the darkness. The attackers, realizing that their secrets were in danger of being exposed, had launched a surprise assault on our makeshift camp. The night erupted with a renewed fury. Explosions, heavy gunfire, and anguished cries filled the air. Captain Okoro backed orders as he organized the defenders. Take cover. Protect the evidence. I clutched the letter tightly as I scrambled behind a makeshift barricade. The attackers' voices were filled with venom. Find that boy. Find the evidence. Their determination to silence us was clear. I peered out from behind a fallen table and saw Baba Musa valiantly fighting alongside local villagers, his eyes burning with defiance. Emeka was by the side of an injured officer, his hands slick with sweat as he tried to stem the bleeding. The camp, which had seemed like a sanctuary just moments ago, had turned into a battleground. In the heat of the attack, I made a critical decision. I had to ensure the safety of the letter. Risking my life, I crept toward a narrow exit at the edge of the camp. The chaos was overwhelming. Every explosion shook the ground, every shout sent a chill down my spine. I could hear the high-pitched cries of those wounded, and the sound of bullets whizzing dangerously close. Summoning every ounce of courage, I crawled along the side of a tent and then bolted down a shadowed path that led deeper into the forest. Behind me, the attackers' furious shouts faded into the distance. I ran until the sounds of battle became a distant murmur, until the oppressive darkness of the forest swallowed me whole. When I finally slowed to catch my breath, the forest was eerily silent once again. The weight of the letter in my pocket reminded me of the heavy responsibility I now carried. I knew that if this evidence reached the right hands, it could expose Mr. Adebola and his network of corruption once and for all. With the first light of dawn, I emerged from the forest onto a narrow road leading to a small town near the state capital. There, a kindly officer at a roadside outpost took me in. His name was Officer Chima, and he listened intently as I recounted every detail: the murder in the clearing, the desperate chase, the tortured cries of my classmates, and the vital evidence I had risked my life to keep safe. I handed him the envelope with trembling hands, feeling its weight as a symbol of truth and hope. Officer Chima promised that he would relay my story and the evidence immediately to the state authorities. In that small, dimly lit room, I found a brief moment of safety and the first glimmer of hope that justice might be served. Yet, even as I rested, my mind replayed the screams from the forest and the faces of those who had suffered. I knew that the path ahead would be long and perilous. In the following days, as news of the attack in Akambi Forest spread, the state capital buzzed with activity. Inspector Akena, a determined and upright man from the National Anti-Corruption Commission, was assigned to our case. He met with Captain Okoro and the other brave souls who had fought to free our classmates. I was called to share my account of that terrible night. With a steady but soft voice, I recounted every moment, the betrayal of our youthful curiosity, the horror of the murder, and the desperate flight that had led me to that small village. Inspector Akena examined the letter carefully. "This is very serious," he said, his eyes dark with determination. "The information in this document connects high-level corruption to the murder of a man who was trying to bring the truth to light. We will verify every detail, and I promise you, justice will be pursued." For the next several days, I stayed at a secure camp in a government facility near the capital. Here, alongside Captain Okoro and Inspector Akena's team, we planned our next steps. The rescuers returned to the forest in organized raids to search for any students still hidden and to seize any remaining evidence. I spent long hours helping the wounded recover and comforting those traumatized by the ordeal. Every whispered thank you and every tear-filled gaze reminded me of the heavy price we had all paid that day. Meanwhile, news began to spread beyond our small community. The media picked up on the story, and public outcry grew. Protesters gathered in the streets of Lagos and other major cities, demanding an end to the corruption that had led to such senseless violence. I watched the news in disbelief, feeling both proud and painfully aware of the loss of my friends, Chidi and Farouk. Their faces, forever etched in my memory, fueled my determination to see that our story would bring about change. The trial and the new dawn. Weeks later, the evidence we had gathered culminated in a major trial in the state capital. The courtroom was filled with tension. I was called as a witness, my small voice echoing in a large hall as I recounted the events of that dreadful day. I spoke of the lush forest that turned into a hunting ground, of the trembling faces of my classmates, and of the moment I clutched the letter that held the secrets of a powerful criminal network. I described, in simple but sincere words, the terror that had gripped us all and the courageous acts that followed. Sitting in the courtroom, I saw the cold, unyielding gaze of Mr. Adebola, the politician who had once commanded respect and power. His presence sent a shiver down my spine, but I stood firm, bolstered by the belief that truth, no matter how small a voice it came from, could shine through the darkness. The prosecutor presented the letter, along with the testimony of our rescue team and other witnesses, weaving together a narrative of corruption, betrayal, and brutal violence. The trial dragged on for days, each session filled with tense moments, emotional testimonies, and long pauses as the truth slowly unfolded. I listened as other victims recounted their harrowing experiences, each story a reminder of the lives shattered by greed and power. Though my heart ached for the many who had suffered, I also felt a spark of hope growing within me. It was as if, in that courtroom, our voices had united to challenge the forces of darkness. When the trial finally ended, there was no immediate victory. Mr. Adebola and many of his allies managed to evade full justice, disappearing into the shadows of their influence. Yet, the trial set in motion a series of reforms. Public pressure mounted, and the government was forced to initiate a thorough investigation into corruption at the highest levels. New laws were drafted, and a special commission was established to ensure transparency and accountability in public office. One afternoon, as I walked home from school, my daily routine now forever altered by the events that had transpired, a familiar voice called out to me. It was Nkechi, the brave girl who had once hidden in the forest. Sigan, she said softly, I want you to know that you saved us all. You gave us hope in our darkest hour. Her words, tender and full of gratitude, made my heart both heavy and uplifted. I smiled and replied, I did only what I had to do. We must all stand together against this darkness. Her hug was brief but filled with the promise of a new beginning.